myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Thursday night brings us Supermac and Gibbo. Good evening, lads.
Hi, Steve.
Evening, John. Boys, all right?
Good to see you, lads. And as always, plenty to talk about. Looking back at the last 7 days at Newcastle United. And a quiet weekend, John, of course, because it was international weekend, but not bad for the home nations. England, of course, doing well. And Scotland getting goals from a guy called McTominay, who we've been linked with. And
never heard of him. I mean, we are supposed to want him to be a holding midfield player, and he scored 2 against Cyprus to win and 2 against Spain to win. So that's some going for a holding midfield player, isn't it? I mean, it's quite incredible. And it was for 2 Newcastle United guys, of course. Steve Clark was our coach, and John Carver is Steve's assistant. So it was quite amazing. I mean, the Spanish result was sensational, wasn't it? I mean, they should have had no chance against Spain, and they beat them 2-0. Good stuff, but I've got to say, nonetheless, I'm delighted to get back to the Premier League because I'm too obsessed about where we are going and where we might end up to have any sort of diversions like we've had in the last fortnight. I'm pleased to get back. And we're getting back to a busy week. I mean, you know, we're not only playing Man United after the Wembley Cup final, but we've got West Ham and Brentford before the week's out. So it's quite a plunge in the deep end again, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. The England results were great, Malcolm. I mean, Harry Kane, of course, banging the goals, and he's looking, he's looking to eventually surpass Alan Shearer, of course, in the Premier League. But yeah, McTominay for Scotland. I mean, it's a name that's been linked, and 40-50 million pounds being thrown, into the air by the media at the moment. And early days, transfer window is, quite a while away. But McTominay, is it an upgrade on what we've got, Malcolm? Do you think?
Yes, I would say yes, but we're in need of so many players, particularly if we do qualify for Europe and in particular the Champions League. We are so really short of players that yes, we need quite a number of real good quality, good class footballers. I think McTominay comes into those categories.
I mean, we do need. I think we need a left back. We need two midfielders, one sitting, one in attacking, which could be McTominay and Madison, and we need a forward and maybe a winger, so there's at least 5, maybe 6, because we're talking squad here, not the team. We're talking squad more than the team, and the squad's thin. We've seen that recently, guys, haven't we? When we've had Joe Linton out suspended, and we've had Willock injured, and then we had Bruno carrying an ankle, etc., etc. We've got thin on the ground, and we can't afford, as Malcolm has often said on this program, we can't afford to go into Europe with the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the Premier League as well next season. A heck of a bigger burden physically than we've had this season. We can't go in that without a deeper squad. And McTominay's interesting. It's not a name that's excited the fans, but then again, how many defensive midfield players would excite the fans? Because that's the dirty knees job, isn't it? That's the job, it's not the blue-eyed boys. They're the Madisons going forward and your centre forwards and your flashy wingers, etc. The defensive midfield player, outside of possibly Declan Rice, there's not one that would necessarily sort of thrill fans. But by Jove, they're important. You can't field 11 San Maximums. Well, you can, but you'll get relegated. So, you can't do that. So you've got to have the dirty knees, guys. And at the moment, I guess it's people like Sean Longstaff that's doing that job for us. What I call the dirty knees job. But yes, we need, and we've particularly worried about midfield recently, haven't we? When we had Bruno suspended, then we were going to the cup final with Willock injured. Then Joe Linton got suspended. We've been thin in the middle of the park.
Yeah, we certainly have. And I do think that you talked about St. Maximin just then, John. I watched Saka playing for England.
Oh dear!
And if I were Eddie Howe, I would collect as many videos of Saka as possible, give them to St. Maximin, and say, sit down and watch them, because the fella, he achieves what St. Maximin is failing to achieve, and they're quite similar type players, but there's always a finish to Saka, both for Arsenal and for England.
I mean, is there anybody better in the world at the moment than Saka, Malcolm? He's so hot at the moment, isn't he?
Well, yes, he is. But it would be well worth looking on the part of St. Maximin at Saka to see how he's getting into finishing situations. And he does it so well. And this is what St. Maximin is failing to do.
I'm not sure St. Maximin's got the football and brain that Saka's got, though.
No, he's certainly got skills. But,
oh yeah.
I think he doesn't think on a team basis. Saka is always thinking on a team basis. I mean, what's the best thing for me to do for the team?
When you think of Newcastle, the current Newcastle squad, if all the players were fit, and by fit I mean match fit, not physically fit, then you've got wingers, you've got Almiron, you've got Murphy, you've got Gordon, you've got St. Maximum, you've got Anderson, who was sensational out wide left in the last game. You've got 5 there, and St. Maximum won't get a start when all those are up to match fitness. When you've got Almiron, Murphy, and Gordon, and Joe Linton can play outside left, when you've got them all fit, St. Maximin won't start. Saka would start in any team.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Trull says, is there an agenda against ASM since he is slated every time by Supermac? Yes, Maxi hasn't been great, but you don't have to mention him every time, in my opinion.
Well, I mention him purely and simply because I saw a performance by Saka for England, 2 performances, and I just thought how Saka plays is exactly what St. Maximin should be doing.
I would be absolutely
just glaring.
I would be absolutely thrilled if Maxi goes out against Manchester United, scores 2, and we win 2-0. I'm not holding my breath, but I would like to see it. And the funny thing is, it's not beyond his capabilities. And I think that's why he's discussed so much. There are players that you don't bother discussing. I mean, I didn't get round to wanting to discuss too often Chris Wood in terms of scoring 30 goals a season because I'm wasting my time. But you can talk about St. Maximin because with his skills, he should have the impact on a game, and he's capable of an impact on a game, which is huge. I mean, I can't get over the fact in my mind replaying how he played against Manchester City at St. James's Park this season.
Yes.
He was absolutely sensational.
Wasn't he just?
Kyle Walker, he absolutely buried Kyle Walker. Buried him. Who is the quickest right back in the league, by the way? He's the quickest right back in the league, Kyle Walker.
Yes, he is, and he lost all self-control. I felt Walker, and he was made to look stupid. And that hasn't happened to too many Manchester City players of late.
Absolutely. But
definitely not. Mozza says, any plans to do another music show with Gibbo? Gibbo, get your thinking cap on and get another music show sorted out, mate, because the fans are wanting a music show.
Hey, I enjoyed that one. It's my great passion, just ahead of Sunderland, but it is ahead of Sunderland. As the passion of my life outside of Newcastle United, the music scene just beats Sunderland FC. Not by much, perhaps the length of the A1, but not by much. So I think we might do that again, Stevie, if you're up for it. But
definitely.
Got a million others.
Definitely. Stephen Kennedy says, how do the lads feel about paying over the odds for similar types of players? He's getting back to McTominay, I guess. From our big six rivals, it irks me to think that we will help our rivals get stronger. It's funny because I said with McTominay, I personally didn't feel he was, he was going to improve our team as much as, maybe he's a Maddison or a Tielemans would. I genuinely feel, buying, maybe he's cast-offs, as you would describe them, from the teams such as Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool. I feel like we've gone past that now, as a football club. So I don't know about paying over the odds. And I guess the question comes from Stephen John with the fact that there's been a 40 to 50 million pound fee tied around his neck. But, I guess looking at the second part of the question, buying from our rivals, I mean, do you see Newcastle doing that? And do you see the other teams dealing with Newcastle?
It's interesting. It's interesting what Stephen is saying, because yes, we don't want cast-offs that are genuine cast-offs, but did Atletico Madrid cast off Trippier? I don't think they particularly did. Did Brighton cast off Burn? It just depends, using the word cast off. And sometimes when sides cast off people, they get it wrong. I mean, Gillingham and Oxford United didn't want Peter Beardsley. Can you believe that, when you think what Peter Beardsley became at Newcastle United and Liverpool? I haven't seen enough of McTominay. Sorry, I haven't studied him enough, like I have Maddison, like I have other players, to have a great opinion of him. My faith in the McTominay deal, if it happens, is that Eddie Howe, the management team and the scouting team, rate him that highly, and they haven't got much wrong since they took over this club in the transfer market. I mean, outside of perhaps Wood, outside of Target, that hasn't quite nailed it down. They've had spectacular successes with Trippier, with Botman, with Byrne, with Bruno, especially, and it looks as if it's going to be with Isak. So they've done terrific in the transfer market. The fees that are currently bandied around for McTominay, I think, are far too big. I've got to say that, for a defensive midfield player, if you're talking about 40 or 50 million, but it's all gone crackers now, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the fees have gone crackers. We paid £25 million for Chris Wood. So the fees have gone over the top. So you've got to be cautious on the fee. But I think Newcastle in the main have been cautious on fees, outside of triggering the release clause in Chris Wood, because they desperately needed a centre forward just to get out of relegation. And hold your hands up, he did that. He was part of the team that did that. So that was okay. But, Newcastle haven't been paying over the odds they've walked away from some deals because the fees were too high. So let's wait and see. A, does McTominay come? And B, if he does, for how much? But,
sure. One player looked at by a number of clubs, he has a different value to each one.
Totally. And also, Malcolm, you get players that before they played for Eddie Howe, look, very average players. We had them in Almiron and Joe Linton,
yes,
etc. And when Eddie Howe got a hold of them, they looked a different player. Maybe Eddie Howe sees in McTominay not the man that's playing now occasionally for Manchester United, but
what he could be.
Yes, what he could make him into.
Yeah.
And we've got to bear in mind that has worked I mean, did we ever expect Joe Linton and Almiron to do what they've did before?
I thought, no, John, and quite simply, I thought that Joe Linton was an absolute donkey.
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
And what is the change with him caused by Howe and his guys has been a complete and utter revelation, I think, to us all.
And Almiron was scoring 1 goal a season. He's got 11 now before his injury. You know, it's so different. So, you know, we'll hold our fire on McTominay. Manchester United might just be getting this wrong. But by the way, it's only now after he's done that 2-2 for Scotland that people are saying, "Oh, blimey, he might be okay." May I say, whether we sign him or not, I hope he comes up here on a Sunday and has a stinker, because he's likely to be standing in for Casemiro in the midfield for Manchester United. I hope he comes up here as a stinker, and I would quietly have a word with him before the game and say, "Mr. McTominay, if you want to come here next season, you want this team to be in the Champions League, so behave yourself, go and sit over there and let the game pass you by."
Classic. Plenty of questions coming in as always. The Hall of Fame has been announced, the Premier League Hall of Fame. A couple of Newcastle players are in there this time round, and it's Les Ferdinand and Andy Cole, former Newcastle players, been shortlisted. Two great names from our past, John. Of course, 2 great number 9s in their own way. Of course, Andy Cole smashed Hughie Gallagher's goal-scoring record for a season, and Sir Les, of course, gave us many happy memories with on his own at first, and then with Alan Shearer. But two good names in there, alongside a certain Michael Owen.
Yes, well, there you go. Now you've just spoiled the whole kit and caboodle, haven't you? I think it might be Michael Owen, the 18-year-old player that played for Liverpool, that's in there, rather than the player that come to Newcastle United. Because at Newcastle United, he wouldn't get in the cellar in the town hall, never mind the Hall of Fame. He was absolutely desperate for us. And his body language, his attitude was very suspect for us. But he was a great player at Liverpool. Our 2... Les is Sir Les to us, will always be fabulous. Andy Cole had that wonderful, wonderful season. No doubt he's made the Hall of Fame because of what he did with Manchester United more than what he did with us. But that 41-goal season always endeared him to us, and as fans. And us that know him know that he's a terrific lad, as Les is, and we're right behind those 2 going into the Hall of Fame. It's a short list, isn't it? That's then boiled down, so he's not they're not automatically going in. If I'm right, isn't that so, Steve? A short list from which to pick the people that will actually go in.
Yeah, no, definitely. Malcolm, Andrew's asking, what about Chris Wood and Steve Bruce for the Hall of Fame? I think we'll leave that.
I think they mean the Hall of Shame.
Yes. Oh, I like that one. I like that one. You've worked well, Malcolm.
Two great number 9s though, Mal, in our era, in the entertainers era, and and a little bit earlier, of course, Andy Cole kickstarting that. What's your views on that?
I think that what Andy Cole did in that one season was quite remarkable, and if they were to want to make much of it, then why not? I thought what he did in those 9 months was absolutely outstanding. And do you look just over one season? Do you look over a whole career? If it's a whole career,
the Hall of Fame's a whole career, isn't it? And what he did for Manchester United will get him in the Hall of Fame more than that one season in Newcastle. But we will love him personally for that one season in Newcastle.
For that one season, yes.
But I think his fame was more with Manchester United, where I think Les Ferdinand, who had a terrific career, went on to Spurs, was with QPR. His best years were still the couple of years he had at Newcastle United. I think the height of Les's career was with us. The height of Andy Cole's career was with Manchester United because of the longevity of that. you know, when it was Cole and York up front, etc., and he continued the goals. But still, his best season of the lot in the league was his 41 goals for us. And the amazing thing, guys, is you've got to remember that those 41 goals did not include any penalties or any direct free kicks. There was no direct free kick or penalty. There were 41 outfield goals. Now that is stunning, isn't it?
I always remember my first season with Newcastle United, and I finished, I think, scoring, I think it was 29 goals, and I was just pipped by Franny Lee, who had 30, 17 of which were penalties.
Oh, I mean, he was his nickname. He had a Chinese nickname, Lee One Pen. Can you remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, he had Rodney Marsh diving all over the place for him.
In fact, when I remember him kicking off on the halfway line, and as he approached the penalty area, he was already beginning to fall. Before he got there, he was already in his low dive into the penalty area. He was quite an artist at it, but he did. I mean, these days, would he have got a lot of yellow cards for diving these days? Because in those days, I mean, he was, you know,
there was no punishment.
No, and no. I mean, he's a better diver than Tom Daly, isn't he?
Lee One Pen, fantastic. Chipper says, see Chris Wood's out for the season. Not bad, getting 15 million back for him now. Yeah, rather unfortunate circumstances, John, for Chris Wood. We never like to see a player getting injured, and his season's over.
What's happened to him, mate? I didn't know.
His season's over, mate. I mean, you know,
was it the injury that kept him out against us? Is now being diagnosed as keeping him out for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, there's very little online about this, only to say that he's going to miss the rest of the season, and that Steve Cooper has now said that he's just going to have to get his head down and be back for pre-season. But yeah, not really anything saying.
I tell you what, I've been critical of not him personally, because he's a nice lad and he's honest as the day is long. But as a finisher, I've been critical of him. But in no way whatsoever do you wish that look on any player that's around. I don't wish that on Chris Wood, and it's awful for him, because he's just gone to a new club. He needed a lift, etc., and now his season's over. That's absolutely dreadful. It's not so bad on Nottingham Forest, because they've got 3 train loads in the sidings of players that are waiting to do something, and they don't know what to do with them. I mean, they signed about 41 in the last transfer window, so they're covered. Not necessarily well, but they are covered. But that's terrible for Chris. I feel very, very sorry for him. No question about that at all.
Yeah, quite sad, Malcolm, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is sad. Oh dear. There is nothing worse than a long layoff for a footballer, particularly at the age that Chris Wood finds himself. You know, he needs to be playing over on a totally regular basis, and for him to be laid off like this, it's a shame. I hope he recovers from it. I really do.
Yeah, sending best wishes to him.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. No question about
just a thought. The deal that is between Newcastle and Nottingham Forest. Does he automatically become a Forest player at the end of the season?
Yes, he already has, because the agreement written in to the deal at the time he went out on loan, Malcolm, said that if he plays X number of games, if he has X number of starts, you must sign him. And Nottingham Forest signed that deal, and he has had those number of starts. So although he's officially on loan till the end of the season, it's all done and dusted. It's legal. They can't get out of it, Nottingham Forest. I'm not suggesting they would wish to, but they can't. So he is a Nottingham Forest player now, yes.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Geordie Tumberlife says, question for Supermac. What made Malcolm live in the Northeast after living down south? Was it the Geordie people?
Oh, I presume he doesn't mean when I came here to play.
Why did you stay in the? Why did you stay?
No,
in the
why are
Northeast?
you now living in the
Yeah,
north?
why am I now in the northeast? Well, firstly, I was invited by Century Radio to come up here and do a program, and well, that ran for 15 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And and from what so many people have said, that I think that the program, having come to an end in 2012, people still miss it. They really do. But there we are. So, and whilst I was at the radio station, I met Carol and we got married. So and she in her first marriage had come back to Newcastle, having said I don't want to be living in Florida or whatever. So she was totally set on remaining in the northeast, and so pretty much she's kidnapped me.
Yeah, well, she's a proper Geordie lass. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, but she's got no John. She's got no taste.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but you should be very grateful for being kidnapped, my old son. You got a lovely lady, and you got to live in God's own country, so that was a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Classic. Okay, we're halfway through the show. Time for the ads. Big thanks to all our sponsors. Thanks to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk and place an order by phoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Fruity Vita Getaways. Book your holidays or short breaks in the UK or around the world with them. Let them find your happy place. ABTA and ATOL registered. You can contact them by emailing fruityvitagetaways@gmail.com. Call or text 0792 842 7895 and join their Facebook group at Fruity Vita Getaways. Thanks to Media Arts for all the technical help and videos that they do. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you want to join the channel, click join, and you can see the various rates that you can pay to help support us. If you want to join by subscribing, hit the subscribe button. That is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to help the algorithm, and click share to other social media platforms. If you do subscribe, we do give you a free car sticker. Just email John at nufcmatters.com and he will post you one out. If you want to join the cult, which is a one-off payment of £25, where you get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to nufcmatters.com and look for the cult membership, or put your phone over this smart code and it will take you straight there. We are available as well as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. And we do support the food bank on this channel. So if you want to make a virtual donation from anywhere in the world, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and put your money into the match day bucket. We've got some events coming up. First off in April, April 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 11th. Peter Beardsley Soccer School is back for ages 6 to 16 years. Go to peterbeardsleysoccerschool.com for more information. An evening with John Anderson at the Time House Surf Cafe, Tuesday the 18th of April. Book your tickets direct from the venue. An evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson 2 nights later, Thursday the 20th of April at the Irish Centre. Tickets from nufcmatters.com. An evening with Nobby Solano at Laurel's in Whitley Bay is May the 11th. So contact the venue direct if you want to go to that event. And we've got our NUFC Matters end of season party, which is the 27th of May at 7 o'clock. Tickets are a tenner from nufcmatters.com. An evening with Rob Lee at Louis Liquor Store, 1st of June, and tickets direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford, Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel Gosforth, which is in aid of the Healing Tour charity. And you can get your tickets direct from them at the healingtour.org.uk website. Just click events. A little bit later in the year, an evening with Gavin Peacock, July the 10th. Tickets from NUFCmatters.com for that one. And if you like your boxing, a night of champions featuring Frank Bruno, Ricky Hatton, Nigel Benn, and Joe Calzaghe. Tickets for that one from goldstarpromotions.com. Couple of questions from Life Goals. Lads, should Isak become our number 9 next season? And I'll double that up with a question from Life Goals as well, asking what you think about the links with Che Adams from Southampton. What do you think about that link as a potential signing? So first part of the question, John, should Isak become the number 9 next season?
Yeah, and I think he will become number 9 next season. They've spent 60 million on him. He's a club record buy. What we've seen on him in the last 2 games when he's belatedly begun to start there, and what he did at Liverpool on his debut, which was quite stunning. Callum can play a significant part with this club, but and this is not meant as a criticism whatsoever, we can't rely on him physically. Yeah. Physically, we cannot rely on him. So you can't make Callum, if you're going to progress, and we've come this far, we could be in the Champions League. Callum will have parts to play if we're in the Champions League. But he can't be established number 9 where you don't have much of a backup, which is the way it was, because you know that if you get half the games out of Callum, you'll have done well. Half of your season's games, you'll have done well. You cannot, wrong side of 30, good natural centre forward though he is, and I've been full of admiration for him, he cannot, if you move on, be a number 1 guy, because physically he's not capable of doing that anymore. I don't think we'll I'm more or less saying that he will be the number 9 as much as whether he should be the number 9, because Newcastle have paid 60 million. I can't see them then paying 80 million for a centre forward, putting him in, and then deciding what to do with Isak, because the thinking is not quite like that. There seems to be this thinking that in the main, he's got to play one position, although we have argued, Malcolm and myself, and I think you've agreed, Steve, that he can play elsewhere. Newcastle at the moment think of him as through the middle centre forward, which is what he does with Sweden, of course. So I think he will be the centre forward next season. But Callum Wilson, I don't think he's loved by Eddie, who loved him at Bournemouth and loved him at Newcastle. He's terrific in the dressing room. He's optimistic, he's bubbly. He's not going to play a lot, but you need a backup, and I think he will remain here as a backup. Because if you look at it the other way, it's difficult to sign people that are only going to play, to sell people that are only going to play half a season, you know.
Or less.
Or less, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Yes. And the problem is well known throughout football with that hamstrings are very unreliable. That it just needs one slight overstretch and bing, it's gone again, and the player is out for 6 to 8 weeks again.
And at this stage of his life, Malcolm, I don't think Callum will be pushing to leave here, because he's with a big club that's going big places, with a manager he adores, with a manager that's got a lot of faith in him. If he's got to take, he'd never admit this publicly, he'll say, I'll fight every game by game by game to be in the team ahead of. But I think he'll not be rushing to go out the door in the way that Lascelles hasn't rushed to go out the door. He will think, will I be better off where I go than where I am now? And the answer is probably no. But I know that's not the question, what happens with Callum Wilson. It's what happens with the team. I just don't think Callum Wilson will be the focal point of the team in the way he has before this season. I don't think he'll be the focal point next season. And providing Isak has 12 games to go, that's a lot of games when you think about it. We've got 3 in the next week. When you take Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday, we've got 3 in the next week. So providing Isak in those 12 games confirms what we suspect he has, which is the way he played at Nottingham Forest, etc., then he will start as the centre forward because they've spent big bucks on him, so they believe he can do it.
Yeah.
Che Adams, Malcolm. I think your face says it all.
Yeah. In all honesty, whenever a club is in a relegation situation like Southampton are, I wouldn't bother looking at any of their players.
James Ward-Prowse?
I was going to say the one I would look at, Stephen.
Okay, maybe Ward-Prowse. Yes, he is out.
Because he's carried them, Malcolm, hasn't he? He's carried them.
But we bought Lewis from Norwich when they were relegated. And he comes here and we find that he can't defend. Well, no wonder Norwich got relegated. For heaven's sake. I'm just highly suspicious of a player with a side getting relegated. And you think, well, just how good is he? Is he going to do us any real good in the side? And no, I'd want to see him in different circumstances.
Okay, we've got plenty of questions coming in before we start looking ahead to the Manchester United game. Let's go for this one. Alan Little says, question for Gibbo and Supermac. What are your memories of Ray Hankin? He's my uncle-in-law. He signed a Leeds United sock tag for me in 1978, and I've recently sold it on eBay for £450.
Well, there you go. That's not bad. I mean, I know Ray well because Wallsend Boys Club is one of my big things, one of my big passions, and I've been involved with Wallsend Boys Clubs for yonks since Peter Beardsley and Steve Bruce and Seeley were there, which is yonks and yonks and yonks. And Ray Hankin's background's that. He was a terrific centre forward with Leeds. He had muscles on muscles, and he put himself about to great effect. A terrific centre forward, one of the front runners that made the name of Wallsend Boys Club. He was one of the early successes of Wallsend Boys Club before we got into the era that went on to be Alan Shearer and Peter Beardsley and Lee Clark and Steve Watson and Robbie Elliott, etc., etc. He was the forerunner, a terrific player, went round and did a lot in the game after he finished playing, I think managing non-league and being involved as a development guy at Newcastle United, etc., etc. So fond memories. And when it comes to a centre forward, way above average centre forward, quality centre forward.
Yes, he had to use all of his ability to be as good as he was. He didn't have pace at all, but he had shoulders on him. Dear me, they were, it was a broomstick from one end to the other. He was a big lad, and he could hold a ball up and hold as many centre halves off as you wanted, and he would bring other players into play all the time, and to have a lack of pace like he did, yet make a success of his career in the top division, that takes somebody very special to be able to do that.
Shearer was very special, and he didn't have a lot of pace, man.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, John.
He did well. You're right. He made the bet in the way that Frank Clark did, in the way, when people, in the way Kevin Keegan did. They made the very best of that talent. And don't you admire people who do that? The people that frustrate me are the people that are laden with talent and never bother themselves to make the best of it.
Right, don't start, Malcolm off. He'll
Okay,
No, I've had my little rant.
I wasn't talking about him. Malcolm, I wasn't talking about him, and I won't mention his name, because if I do, it's an automatic button with you, and I'll have to go away and order breakfast for tomorrow morning. So I'm not
He
going to
who must not be
I didn't
mentioned.
mention it, Steve. Move on quickly, my
Well
son.
done, John. Well done. I think we got away with that. Paul Furlong says, what's everyone's thoughts about the new OADT from the Premier League? Very interesting that Man U may have campaigned for something that scuppers the Qatari bid. Karma, he says. And been a lot of meetings going on, in the last week, hasn't there? And lots of rumour and speculation, John, about the Newcastle takeover being looked over with a fine-tooth comb, and Masters was asked a question about it. And, it's very much, to me, feels like a dead cat scenario, a dead cat story.
Well,
look at this over there while we try and get something in behind closed
going
doors.
to go down this route again? I mean,
Exactly.
we've already been down that route. The takeover was held up for about a year and a half because we were going so slowly down that route, and we want to reopen it again. The route I want to reopen again is that we let Mike Ashley back into the Football League, which is what he wants. I think that needs more looking at from a football point of view. Please, let's not. I mean, we've had a guy that owned Birmingham City that went into jail in the Far East because of money laundering. We had the Prime Minister, wherever it was, that had Man City that's been done. We had the Oyston family that had Blackpool. Football has been riddled with people that weren't fit for purpose, but were allowed to be fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hypocritical to start now regurgitating everything we've known in the past with one particular club. Good gracious, it's not as if the good name of football in this country has never been sullied by the people that's been allowed to own our football clubs, because by Jove, we can go through the Manchester City club, the Blackpool club, the Birmingham club, that were owned by absolute rogues. Absolute, totally and utterly rogues. And some people that actually did time as a consequence. So please do not open yet another can of worms. Yawn is, you know what? People are getting frightened of us. They're getting frightened of us. So every time they can do something to stop us, they'll try to stop us. You know what? They can't stop us. Hard lines, kids. You've had it. It's not going to happen.
It might just take a little bit longer to get where we all want to be. But all it is a bit of a hindrance.
It's amazing they keep trying to change rules and regulations now that Newcastle's got a few quid to spend, Malcolm, isn't it?
Yeah. Good heavens! Why is it these people don't just look to settle the matter on the football pitch? I think it's more than jealousy. I think it's absolute fear. They are fearing for what is going to happen over the next 10, 20 years.
But they didn't stop the Glazers coming in, or the people that come in at Liverpool. And, you get people marching at Manchester United against the Glazers, etc., etc. There was nothing stopping them coming in at the time, and they're not being ridiculed now, apart from through Manchester United supporters who are absolutely sickening.
Yes, and when you think that they bought, the Glazers bought Manchester United for under £800 million.
Yeah.
And they're talking now of 6 billion.
Yeah, ludicrous, isn't it?
If they sell it.
They're not even talking about selling it. I mean, the stories you hear in this week is that they might just sell part of it. You're thinking,
that's right.
This is crazy, like it is. But anyway, it's not our problem.
It is not.
Top Bobby says, I'm wondering what John and Malcolm's thoughts are about competitions in the past, such as the Anglo-Italian Cup, the Texaco Cup, and the Watney Cup. It's interesting because we do a great show with George Mitchell on here called Those Were the Days, and we've systematically looked at every season that George has been a Newcastle fan. So we started in 1950, and we're currently up to season 75-76. So of course we're right in the mix of the Texaco Cup and Newcastle winning it back to back, and it's fascinating.
And the Anglo-Italian.
And the Anglo-Italian. I mean, crazy amount of games. I think it was 74-75 or 73-74. Sorry, I think we played something in the region of 70 games.
Yes.
All told with all those cup competitions. So, I mean, what's coming to you, Malcolm? What's your memories of those, and what's your thoughts about those competitions? Were they beneficial looking back, or was that just too many games to play with in retrospect?
No, I think they were hugely beneficial in a lot of ways. You've got to remember that we were playing in that, but weren't England, John, banned from Europe at the time? From the European Cup.
They formed competitions, Malcolm, to fill voids.
Yes.
To fill voids in Europe. So you weren't having certain things in Europe. So let's have an Anglo-Italian because it's European, if you like.
Yes.
Us and the guy Gigi, whatever they called him at the time, was involved heavily in that competition. The Texaco Cup was just called Texaco because the petrol people sponsored it.
Yeah.
But it was really England v Scotland. The whole idea was England clubs and Scottish
Good
clubs.
heavens, yeah.
And that filled a good hole and was not, in my book, to be ridiculed when you look back. It's lost its impetus now because you think Texaco Cup, what's all that about? And if you're old enough, you remember it was a petrol station. But it's slightly different from that. And when you look at the Anglo-Italian, I mean, we went over to Rome and won a one-off game.
I remember the Lazio game. We won 2-0.
And then we won in Florence against Fiorentina, who were a heck of a side in the Serie A in the final, without you, Malcolm, because you were playing for England.
I was called up for England. Yeah,
you were called up for England.
Yeah, and I was damned annoyed as well. I wanted to play in the final over in Florence.
It wasn't easy to win them games. You go over to Rome, we went into a riot. As you know, we went into a riot in Rome. But with the fans, because we won, and obviously they'd lost, so the fans went crackers. And then we go to Florence and win. They're not a stroll in the park. Those games aren't a stroll in the park.
No. But at the same time, John, in all of it, all the players they're learning new stuff. Playing against a slightly different form of football that the Italians played by comparison to what we were meeting week in, week out in England. And I thought it was absolutely invaluable for players and a fabulous experience, not just for the players, but for supporters as well. And they were competitions, and we played some damn good sides, and did well against them.
The interesting thing, Malcolm, as you well know, is that in those days, we talk about situations now in these poor days who are playing on a lawn with beautiful light football boots and an even lighter ball, playing in a quagmire in those days with a ball that felt like it would give you a hernia, and et cetera, et cetera. We played in the Football League, the first division, which was 42 games in, not 38.
Yes.
We played in the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the Texaco Cup. And Joe Harvey put out his best side every time. Not only did he not rest players in the FA Cup and the League Cup like they do now in the early rounds, but he didn't rest. We played in the Texaco Cup final a few days, X number of days, the same month, before we played in the 74 Cup final. I looked it up in my record book. This famous one, Steve. I keep disappearing and getting out the cupboard and bringing out here and saying, "Here's the facts." I looked up the record book of who played in the Texaco Cup final just before the FA Cup final of 74, and 10 of the team that played in the Cup final played in the Texaco Cup final.
Mm-hmm. And
was
that against Burnley, John?
Yes. The one that didn't was somebody injured.
Yeah, because
it wasn't a matter of putting out the reserves in the Texaco Cup final because we're playing Liverpool in the final. We'll put out our first team.
Sure, because in the space of a month, we played Burnley 5 times, twice in the league, twice in the Texaco Cup, and once in the FA Cup semi-final.
Semi-final, yes. Yeah, absolutely. But of course, people will smile now. And when I say what Newcastle's won, we never include the Anglo-Italian and the 2 Texacos because we're talking about the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the Fairs Cup. And yes, I can understand that, and that's true. But I don't diminish those competitions because if you were there at the time, they were darned hard. They were darned hard. And the sides in them wanted to win. And we every side put out the top team. I mean, we are only not playing in the FA Cup now because of the team was sent to Sheffield Wednesday. I think there was 8 changes when we played Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup.
Yes, there was.
And we've got the best defence in the Premier League, 19 goals conceded in 26 games. We changed the whole of the back 4 and the goalkeeper at Sheffield Wednesday to rest him.
I know. I thought that was madness.
Criminal, really.
Yes, yes, absolutely, it was. And John, the first team at Newcastle, the first team squad always changed in the home dressing room for training, and everybody else changed in the away dressing room. And I used to look around, and there was never more than 15 players in that first team dressing room, never more. And so this was 15 players who played 2 games a week, pretty much every week of the season, and we just had to get on with it. But I throughout my career, I always felt that I would much preferred playing 2 games a week and training a couple of other days rather than training for 4 or 5 days, then playing at the weekend.
Interesting. Good question, that. So thank you very much for that one. Newcastle United take on Manchester United this coming Sunday, live on Sky Sports, 4:30 kickoff. Pre-match, you can see Supermac at the Dog and Parrot, 1:45. Gibbo will be with Ando at Pumphrey's at 2 o'clock. Malcolm returns to the Dog and Parrot round about 7 o'clock after the game, hopefully with 3 points in his pocket. As for team news, well, Joe Linton returns from his 2-match suspension, which is good news for the midfield. Miggy Almiron, it was feared that he could miss out to this game, but he has been seen not only running on grass, but cycling and running around Dorsley Park in the last few days. So that looks
Can he afford a car?
Can't afford a car. Nick Pope, Anthony Gordon and ASM have all been seen training as well. Anyone who's seen any reports about Pope being in ill health, it's the wrong Pope that you're looking at in the chat tonight. And Sven Botman's okay as well by the sounds of it. News on the availability of Fabian Schär is still awaited. Eddie Howe's press conference, of course, is still to come, where we'll probably find out absolutely nothing anyway, because he always plays his cards close to his chest. The good news with Manchester United is Casemiro is suspended. We do know that. Donny van der Beek, Christian Eriksen and Tom Heaton are all out through injury. Garnacho, Martial and Sabitzer and Varane are expected to return. And although Marcus Rashford withdrew from the England squad after picking up a knock in the FA Cup game against Fulham, it is assumed, once again, to face Newcastle, that there'll be some kind of miraculous recovery. Stu Atwell is refereeing. Andy Madeley is on that thing that's often switched off, VAR. And Malcolm and Gibbo, over to you guys. Gibbo, come to you first. how do you see this game going? And I guess the big question is Joe Linton straight back in?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think my answer to that is yes, but maybe it's not in the way that you expected, Steve. He went out of the midfield and Joe Willock come in. I think Joe Willock's been sensational in the 2 games that we've actually won. The 2 games we won, 2-1, Wolves and Nottingham Forest, I think Willock has been absolutely terrific. Willock is loved by Eddie Howe. He has either started or gone on as a sub in every game he's been available for this season. The only time that hasn't happened is when he was fleetingly injured. So I don't think Joe Linton will replace Willock. I think he'll come back in the side because he's 8'6". He's built like Gray's Monument. He sticks his foot in. He charges about. He terrifies people to death. And I think he'll play. But I think he could well start wide left up top, because that position at Forest, at the start of the game, it was Alan Saint-Maximin. And then at half-time, it was Anderson. Now, if you look at that left wing position, Alan Saint-Maximin, to be hauled off at half-time, you're pretty rubbish. So I don't think he will necessarily start. Anderson was wonderful, sensational, and could easily start, but I don't think he will, because he's only 20 and he's in the pecking order, and the manager's always cautious about people like that. I think he'll come on. I think he's done himself the world of good, but I don't think he'll start. Gordon could start because he's supposed to have got off his bed and nails in the same way and walked in the same way as Miggy Almiron has. But I don't think he'll start Almiron and Gordon as the 2 wide players. I think Murphy's done enough to keep his position on the other side. But I don't think he would do that anyway, because he eases them back after injuries. And Gordon hasn't played a lot for us, because of the fact that he was League Cup tied. It's been stop, start from. I think he'll come off the bench. And I think Joe Linton could well play as the only change on the left side of a 3 up front, which would be Murphy, Isaac, and Joe Linton.
Yeah, the only problem with that, John, is that Joe Linton has got a phenomenal record in the middle of the park, winning the ball, getting tackles in, and when he's sort of shoved out wide, you're not benefiting from his defensive qualities.
He's been picked out there a few times by the manager.
Yeah, he has. Yes. Yes.
Well, the only fella that could drop if they put him in the middle to win the ball is Sean Longstaff. They're not going to drop Willock going forward, and they're not going to drop Bruno.
I hear criticism of Sean Longstaff, but have a look at his stats. They are phenomenal. He runs further in every 90 minutes than any other player in the whole of the Premier League.
So how does Joe Linton get into midfield then?
Yeah. I know it's difficult. We're spoilt for choice, I suppose, from what's technically is a small squad.
Yeah, I just got a feeling that the man. I try to put myself in Eddie's boots, because they're the ones that matter. Mine don't matter, whatever, because I'm not going to be able to pick the team. And Eddie loves Willock. He will want Joe Linton in the side because he adores Joe Linton, and I can understand why. So it's a matter of how do you get Joe Linton in the side. I think the only change on Sunday will be Joe Linton 4... and fill in the empty space.
Yes.
Now, the easiest way to get him in is a left wing, because at Nottingham Forest, it was a start with Maxi, who was poor enough to be pulled off at half time, so he's not going to start. And Ando was terrific, but he's 20. He's, I think he'll want to use him again as an impact sub, and I don't think Gordon long term is going to play. There's no question. He was bought for 40 million. He's going to get in the team. But in the way Isaac had to wait, in the way Bruno waited when he first come, it was about 6
Yes, he
months.
did. 5 games, wasn't it? He went.
Aye. So I've just got a feeling that the tough decision of who goes out for Joe Linton is easiest solved by him playing on the left. And of course, you can change positions. You can move inside. Willock can go out there as the game goes on. You know, you're not put in little pegs and holes and you stay there the whole game. But it may be totally wrong, but that appears the easiest way of getting Joe Linton back on the side.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just looking at this message here where it finishes with Willock on the left. Willock's not a left-sided player. Joe Linton will do a better job out there than Willock will. Willock's got to be pretty much through the middle, either left or right of middle, but he's not a wide man.
Okay, the big question, as always, Gibbo, your prediction for the game of the weekend?
Yeah, of course. Well, I've said this is not a revenge game for Wembley because you can't have a revenge by picking up 3 points when you haven't won a domestic trophy for something like 68 years. You know, it can't. That game was far too big. This game has got 3 points. They may matter hugely to us, but even if we get them, it doesn't guarantee us Champions League football because there's 11 more games to come. So I won't call this revenge because I'm so desperate for a trophy. Nothing will be bigger than us just failing to get the trophy at the League Cup final. So it's not revenge. We've played them twice. We've got a wonderful 0-0 draw down there. We lost 2-0 at Wembley. We owe them one. We're at home this time. One of the great things that I love, and I look at their side and I think they've got weaknesses, and I keep saying they're not clever at the back, but we've played them twice and never scored against them, by the way, but they're not clever at the back. I look at the centre forward Weghorst, and he looks a replica of Chris Wood to me. He scored 2 goals in 18 games since he started, and I just pray he plays because he got Burnley sent him out on loan, and he went over to Turkey and brought him back.
And of course, they're missing Casemiro.
And they're missing Casemiro,
who is a really top class player.
Oh, absolutely. But Rashford's the problem. I'm convinced we won't lose.
Okay.
So, and by the way, the first thing there is we've got the best defence in the league. We've only let in 19 and 26. Manchester, if you look at, we've let 19 in 26 games. Manchester City have let 25 in. Arsenal, top of the league, let 26 in. Chelsea have let 28 in. Liverpool, 29. Manchester United, 35. We've let in 19. And Spurs, 40. And Spurs are above us. But on the other side of the coin, we haven't kept the clean sheet in our last 8 League and Cup games. We've always let in either 1 or 2, which means we have to score at least 2 to win in those games.
Yes.
Which is difficult. But let's go out and keep a clean sheet. If we keep a clean sheet against Manchester United, we get a positive result because we either draw or win. And my head tells me it'll be a draw. My heart tells me we'll win just because I've been uplifted by the last 2 games. And I want to go with my heart. I want to go with my heart, so I will go with my heart. But what I definitely expect is that we don't lose.
Sure.
Okay.
And
Malcolm, prediction?
Well, yeah, I think that Newcastle, they must have been kicking themselves, the players, after the Wembley game, the fact they didn't score. When you think that first 20, 25 minutes, Newcastle, dear me, they were all over Manchester United. Manchester United couldn't get the ball off Newcastle. And so if you look back at that part of the game, if that's how we can start and continue on Sunday, great. I'm going to take us to win, and I'm saying that we'll keep a clean sheet against this lot, and that well, I'll take us 1-0. I think it's going to be a tight old game, but I'll take us for a 1-0 win.
Would that do me? You, Stephen?
2-1, mate. 2-1. Newcastle are going to win 2-1.
Well, we won the last 2-1, so I would definitely settle for that.
2-1, and Isaac to continue his little goal scoring run. I think Isaac's going to do the business.
That would be good.
And a nice goal from Bruno. I think it's overdue. A goal from Bruno.
Wouldn't it be good if it's as easy as it is sitting on a Thursday night talking about it? It would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Great stuff as always, chaps. See you next week. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the football. I'll see you at the Dog and Parrot, Malcolm. Take care.
Yes, indeed. Look forward to it.
Take care, guys.